Welcome to the Kidlit Club with Sally Rippon and Adrian Beck.
On this episode, the Pigeons, Andrew McDonald and Ben Wood. A Rippon report with Sarah Mayer Cox and Bren McDibble's brilliant idea.
Welcome to another episode of the Kidlit Club. Sally Rippon, good
Adrian
to be with
Beck,
you.
Good to have you here.
And we are going to be steering you through another excellent episode, as you just saw.
Yes.
And I've got one of the best topics that I ever wanted to bring up on this show. I've been saving it for this episode.
Yep, I'm really looking forward to this because this is totally my favourite topic.
This is going to have everyone astounded. I want to talk to you about fart books.
Is there such a thing as too many fart books?
Is there such a thing as too many fart books?
I don't know. I'm going to put this one on you, Adrian. What do you reckon?
Absolutely not. Sally Rippon?
What do you reckon, guys? I mean, does every book have to have a fart in it?
Well, I seem to recall that there's a bit of flackety in a certain Polly and Buster series.
Good spotting, yes.
So you might be coming around to my way of thinking.
What's the role of a fart in a kid's book, do you reckon? Because nobody can not laugh at a fart, right? It doesn't matter how old you are. Whether you're hearing one or whether you're talking about one, it instantly makes you laugh.
I think so.
Do you think it's a go-to for kids' humour?
Look, I think it is. And why I bring this up is because I saw a little bit of chat online. There's been a bit of chat
Yep.
in the last few months because there's been a lot of fart books.
Right.
Like No One Likes a Fart.
Yep.
Do Unicorns Fart? There's a whole bunch of different fart books out, and we're cycling through a few. For those that are watching this, we're cycling through a few of the amazing fart books that are out there that you might want to get involved in.
Okay, so you don't have too many fart books in your life.
That's right. But why I bring this up is obviously we've reached peak fart, or have we reached peak fart? Could we go even more fart? I don't know. We'll see. But why I ask this is I wonder which side of the fence you're on, Sally. Would you like to see more fart books? Would you like to see less fart books? And then I'll give you my take on a fart book.
All right. I think I've changed as I've got older. I think I've taken myself less seriously. I
Right.
think when I first started out and I was even more earnest than I am now, which is, I know, hard to believe. I think
not
it
at
was
all.
a little bit like, oh, seriously, do we have to have another fart book? But I think now I totally get that whatever makes kids laugh, and what makes them laugh is going to make reading an enjoyable experience. If they love reading, they're going to try their hand at other things too. So potentially, I would say that there is room for as many fart books as people want to read. There you go. This
Fantastic.
is the new me.
I like the new you. You're coming around to my way of thinking.
It might have something to do with you.
Maybe you're hanging around with me too much.
Oh, Adrian.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's just an occupational hazard when you do a vodcast with me. Now, the thing is, what I love about them
Yes.
is that they automatically cut through to those kids that might never pick up a book ever.
Yeah. Okay, good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I suppose, I don't want to equate farting with sport, but why I like writing sporty books is that they also potentially reach those kids that may never really be inspired to pick up a book. But if they see that it's about sport,
Yes.
they might pick it up and have a read of it, and then potentially they become readers, okay?
Yeah. So funny and sport.
Funny and sport.
I think good
Yeah.
ways to hook in readers.
And if that has to be gross out humour, then there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
in my view.
And we all have our strengths. You know, I would say writing fart books is probably more your strength, would you?
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is, because you're the funny guy. I'm your straight sidekick.
So, not at all. So, there are some of those moments in Polly and Buster, but not very many.
Yes,
but
true.
there are probably quite a few more in my books. That you're right about that. But I do like the way that they might potentially reach kids that that perhaps might not pick up books. So, I think I'm all for fart books.
Yeah.
And I think Sally is voting yes
I'm
for
all
farts
for
as
I'm
well.
all for kids laughing, yeah. And I think we could probably even mention that in the next Total Crack Up book, there's quite a lot of farts in there.
There are
Yes.
an amazing amount of farts in there. In fact, in our foreword, we've put a warning about how many farts there are. Because all our wonderful authors, whom we love, they all write their own stories, and just by chance,
Yep.
I think maybe 3 or 4 of them have a lot of fartiness. So
It's probably a cross-cultural, generational joke that works on anyone, really, doesn't
exactly, it's the
Yeah.
perfect humour.
Yes.
Okay, I think we got to the bottom of that, so to speak. Okay, now it's time for
Boom, boom.
this.
The Rippon Report, where this time round, Sally speaks with Sarah Mayer Cox from the Bendigo Writers Festival.
Hello, Sally Rippon for the Kidlit Club with Sarah Mayer Cox, who's
Hi.
a long-time children's and YA book lover, specialist in the field, and has all kinds of letters after her name. But today we're going to be talking in particular about putting a schools program together for a major festival, because you have been organising the schools program for the Bendigo Writers Festival for how long?
2012.
Right.
Yeah. But
Okay.
before that, before the Writers' Festival, I was involved through La Trobe University. We used to run a biennial children's lit festival.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay,
so and that's
interesting.
been since '95.
Right.
Yeah, so.
So what was part of the children's festival? Was that similar to a schools
No,
program?
it was a standalone festival.
Yeah.
We decided that because I worked in the School of Education at La Trobe University on the Bendigo campus, and we had children's literature. We were one of the few universities that had you could do a full suite of children's lit as a major. But then our students said, well, where do we go to from here? So we thought, wouldn't it be great to have a festival where they could see all the authors and illustrators in action? And because illustration's always been my passion and my area of research, we also always had an accompanying exhibition of art. And so, yeah, it grew out of that. And then when the Bendigo Writers' Festival started, the La Trobe Children's Lit Festival had sort of was on hold. So it just, someone said we need to have a schools day, and La Trobe is one of the major sponsors of the Writers' Festival, and they said, well, we better get Sarah involved.
Yeah, fantastic. Because you've got a background, and I'm just taking this off what I remember us talking about. I haven't researched this properly.
That's all right.
But you've been in the CBC Council for quite a while.
Yeah.
You taught children's literature at Bendigo, at La Trobe.
Yes.
In Bendigo. What are the other areas of children's books that you've been involved in that has kind of led you into this position?
My original training was as a primary teacher, with a background in literature. Children's lit was my major at uni, and I was actually going to be a secondary art and craft teacher.
Right.
But another story for another time. So I've always loved art, and I've always been attracted to the sort of illustration and design side of picture books. And I've worked, I'm not a trained teacher librarian, but I've had 2 stints working as a teacher librarian in a school, which is just like heaven on a stick.
You do enjoy
yeah,
that? Yeah,
I love
great,
it, love
great.
it. Yeah, and then a lot of my research, I've been lucky enough to work with, some of Australia's top illustrators, and Robert Ingpen very kindly asked me to write some commentaries for a sort of a book about the illustration art of his work. That was
That
in
came out a few years
2000.
ago, didn't
Yeah,
it?
so it's
Yeah.
been out for a while now.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was so, and I'm so lucky. I would like to put on my tombstone, she was a friend of the illustrators. So that's my passion.
So going back to the Bendigo Writers Festival, so you were approached to start a schools program, and what's that like, starting up a schools festival program that hasn't ever existed before? What was the first thing you had to do?
Well, we had to work out, luckily we knew, because I'm really involved, as well as with the Children's Book Council of Australia, I'm also really involved in the Australian Literacy Educators Association here in Bendigo. So we're constantly putting on events for teachers. Yeah, so we know how to structure things, find a good venue, have
And to
good
find-
speakers.
And to find your audience too.
Yes,
I guess you've got all
absolutely.
these contacts in the schools already.
Yeah. And I was lucky. I think probably part of the reason I was recruited was because people know I'm a blabbermouth and I like people.
Two good things to have.
I like to think I make friends. And I love being able to give voice to people who are not going to be on everybody else's program, and that's of
Woman
course,
after my heart.
yeah, I know. Well, that's I think that's really important for children.
Yes.
And that's part of my CBCA streak, that you don't always know what you like until you've read it or
Yes.
seen it or viewed it.
Yeah. Or
with-
try spinach.
Yes,
you might
absolutely.
be surprised.
Yeah, try it 25 times. It won't take you that many times, but you will like it. So I think that's how it started. So first of all, you've got to work out who your audience is, and we were really lucky because the brief that we were given was it would be a free day for all the schools.
Correct.
Which is just, the City of Greater Bendigo and Latrobe is so generous. And so Latrobe sponsors all speakers, and City of Greater Bendigo, if the schools apply, all the bus travel is
Fantastic.
covered. And often it's the bus that's the killer
Right.
for a school.
Okay.
You can, and we've had this before and other things, we've put on fantastic events, but if it's going to cost a school $8 per child to get them there,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money for some parents
Yes.
to get them there. So
So
we
the
had
whole
a great-
idea being is that you reach as wide a demographic as
Yes.
possible, which is really important.
Yeah. And we were also really conscious that so much of culture is about, you have to go to Melbourne,
Yes.
and really life goes on when the street lighting stops. And so we wanted to bring the best of Australia and beyond to the country, and really give those children those light bulb experiences, because you just never know who's sitting in the audience and who's going to be the next great writer, illustrator, cultural producer, entrepreneur.
Yep.
You don't know what you're going to turn on for them. Yeah.
So how do you choose people? So you've been running this for a few years now, and I know that the Bendigo Writers Festival that's just passed, you had Rachel Spratt down from
Yes,
Sydney,
yeah.
and you had Chris Kennett, who's a local
Yeah.
illustrator.
Yeah.
So how do you try to have local artists and
Yes, we
interstate
tried to.
artists?
Yeah, so we tried to have a mix.
Yeah.
And we're really conscious that we want to honour our local artists and writers as well, and because they support us so generously, and plus it's nice when you can, introduce someone and say, "Here's our very own."
And the kids might see them at the shop.
Yeah, I know.
It's a
It's
bonus.
great. Yeah. So that's really good. But then we also try to make sure that it's a mix of people that might be well known, might be having a new book coming out, but also might not. So we're very conscious it's not just all about the latest and the greatest, because often there are books that we think are really important that have been, the voices have been overlooked. So for instance, this year, one of the speakers we had was Sue McPherson, who wrote Grace Beside Me and Brontide. And Brontide, and published by Magabala Books, who I think do an extraordinary job. And I didn't know Sue McPherson beforehand, but another new friend. But when I read Brontide, and I reviewed it with Brianna Patrick on her ABC Sunday Nights show, I said to Rihanna, and I said it to Sue too, that was the most important book published for young adults last year. Sadly, it's missed out on a whole lot of awards, and so you've got to keep plugging at those books, and you've got to keep putting those authors and illustrators in front of audiences, because books, they don't have, and you would know this much more than me being in the industry, books don't have that slow burn time these days that they used to.
It's true.
If
you get a
think-
little window,
You
and
do.
if it doesn't sell, then it's over. And often
Yeah.
publishers can't even store the books,
No,
so they'll often
no.
give them away or pulp them.
Yes, it's
I know,
awful.
it's all quite scary. And also, I feel really strongly that I think that, and Adrian Beck, who I do the show with, and I often talk about, a lot of creative people are introverts.
Yes.
And we have to force ourselves to be able to speak in front of audiences. And the more practice you get, the easier it becomes. But I'm really interested in the child in the audience who's the creative introvert, who gets a chance to see someone on the stage who's not a natural performer and think, hold on, I could do that. Because I feel like if we only fall back on people who are ex-neighbour stars or who have been on television their whole lives, then it creates a veneer between the child creator and the possibility of them being able to do that one day. So I love the idea of potentially less performing type
Yes.
people at a festival.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you would consider, because I know often when people first start speaking on stage, it's incredibly nerve-wracking for all of us.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes have moderators, or do you interview these people on stage just to help that a little bit?
So what we try to do, and I suppose it's the teacher/lecturer in me that will always try and craft a session, because I'm conscious that although they're fun entertainment sessions, there's always an element, you know, you can take me out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of me. So I'm really trying to curate sessions where the children are getting a lot out of it, but the teachers are as well. So that the teachers are going back and going, okay, you know, I could teach writing or illustration slightly differently. I could turn my kids on in a certain way. So what we try to do is, and because I've been in, you know, working in this field for nearly 30 years now, I have a sort of an idea of how people will work. So there are some people who you just want to put them on stage, give them a big screen behind. I always ask them wherever possible to be as visual as they can, because I think children in the audience of whatever age, I'm not an oral learner, and even if I'm listening to the most interesting person in the world, I do zone in and out. Whereas if I've got a slide to hold my attention, I'll zone out for a while, and then that slide will bring me back, and then I go, oh, okay, and then I listen, I re-engage again.
And I often recommend that to new speakers too, who are just starting out. If you've got a slideshow, it's a prompt for you as well. So if you panic, you don't know where you're at, you've got your slide to think, oh, that's right. And when I did this picture, or whatever, or when I was 5 years old, when this picture was taken.
That's right. And I think also that can be such a fantastic inspiration point for audiences, because I imagine that authors and illustrators, they take so much for granted. They think, well, everybody knows how to do it. Well, I want to see, you know, a picture of, well, how do you mix paint? Or how do you, what happens when you make a mistake, and how do you recover? Or how excited are you when you get your first box of proofs? Or, you know, just really simple stuff. I want to know what your kitchen table looks like. And if I want to, and I'm, you know, in my mid-50s, sure as hell there'll be a child in the audience who might be the really naughty child in the class, and if you go, do you know what, this is what my dog looks like, or this is what, whatever it is.
This is how messy my studio is.
Yeah, exactly. Then they go, oh, okay, this person is interesting, I can relate to them. There's that text-to-self connection. And then you've hooked them back in.
Great.
And what we want to do is create an experience for them where, even if they've not read any of the books of the authors or illustrators beforehand, they're able to say, I've seen that person, and I can go back now and I can hear, you know, I can hear Rachel's voice as I'm reading an R.A. Spratt book, and I can hear her trumpet going off in the foyer of Alumbra as she's calling everybody into her session, and I think that's really important for children.
So you've been doing the schools program for a few years now. Can you give us a funny story or a highlight, or has there been a particular speaker that's thrown you?
I think probably the speaker I've loved working with, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story. Lee Hobbs is one of my favourites, and he's a darling man. We once accidentally, and he's been a few times, we once accidentally scheduled him in a place, and we presumed that we had told the students, well, no, we know that we had told the students to bring along pencils and paper, and they appeared without them. And so he got a little bit sort of flustered, and I turned around, and he would, and he's an ex secondary art and craft teacher, so he knows his stuff. And I turned around, and I thought, where's he gone? He's not on the stage. And he was out the back, and all of a sudden I could hear this rummage. He was dragging all these blow mould plastic trestle tables onto the stage. Next thing you know, he's sitting them all and he's calling the kids down. He's going, right, you 8 people, you can come down here and you can come down here. He just organised the whole thing.
Turned it into a workshop.
And everyone was just in awe. And then, of course, we all sat down and drew Old Tom.
Great.
He didn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
And because he's so passionate about the idea that everybody can be an artist in their own way and there's no right or wrong.
Yes.
And that idea that in the same way that everyone's got their own signature, everybody does their own line work in their own way. Those children, what could have gone absolutely pear-shaped, they walked out just going, oh my God, that was such a great session.
That's
so,
beautiful.
yeah, it was probably...
And I feel like, you know, a lot of authors and illustrators have just come out of Book Week. A lot of them are really exhausted. But I think that's a really good reminder as to what really interacting with a creative person can bring to a child. You know, just that accessibility, that this is somebody that's doing what I do for the love of it at home, but they're doing it for their job. Well, it's definitely worth a trip for Melburnians.
Yes. And we hope that Sally's going to join us
eventually.
She's on our wish list for next year.
It really was an extraordinary festival.
I'm
It's
so
the
glad
first
that
time
you were
I've
able to-
been.
Yeah.
But congratulations. It's really exciting. And it feels like it's just growing bigger and bigger too.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
I think next year there'll be lots of Melbourne people in the audience,
I
hopefully.
hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Great. Lovely to meet you again.
too.
Yeah.
That was yet another ripping Rippin' Report, but now it's time for Social Media Watch.
Okay, it's time for Social Media Watch, and I love this segment because I get to find out all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah, well, because you're on Twitter, which I'm not, so you
Yep.
do get access to quite a lot of information that I
do.
don't. Yeah.
Yes, I find a lot on Twitter. I find a lot on all sorts of formats, but this one is Twitter. A friend of ours, Bren McDibble, and she's a great author. In fact,
Beautiful book, How to Be, just
Be.
won the CBC right off the bat.
Yep.
It was fantastic.
It's awesome. And she wrote a tweet, maybe a few weeks back now, but which caught my eye, and I'll read it for you now. I would like to see a children's book festival for humorous books where every author attending was female. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, it's a really great idea because often when you look at the funny books, that like the top 5 funny books, it's true, they're often males. A lot of comedians are going into writing children's books as well, which made me think about the funny children's authors that I love.
Yes.
And there's a lot of them. This is one of my favourites. So Heidi McKinnon, I think, is absolutely hilarious. And she does
yes.
picture books. This is her first one, but all of them are pretty funny. Do you have some favourites?
I do. I picked out a few from the shelf. My great friend Megan McDonald, who I was lucky enough to catch up with at the Sydney Writers Festival. She obviously does Judy Moody and The Stink, and they are hilarious too.
Yep.
And I also like Kate and Joel Temple, but Kate from that duo does a whole bunch of different books, including yours truly, Alice Tooley, which I think is pretty cool too. And I've got heaps actually. Have you got any more?
Well, I think you can't go past Rachel Spratt, which is
R.A.
the one that
Spratt.
I think you're going to hold up
I
because
am,
she
yes.
is hilarious.
She is.
But also someone we had on the show regularly a little while back as well, and who also mentioned the books in homes. So Nat
yes.
Amore is hilarious.
Yes, she's absolutely a cackfest, an old-fashioned cackfest she is. And of course, I also loved Fiona Harris's work with the Super Moopers too. I think she's hilarious too. There's heaps of funny females.
I'd like to see a festival with all of them as the lineup. That sounds
Absolutely.
good to me.
Be a great idea. Thank you to
thanks,
Bren
Bren.
McDibble for that idea. And maybe in the comments, we'd like to hear some of your favourite funny females and give them a bit of a pump up because there's heaps of them and we love them.
Yes.
Great. Now it's time for this.
Our special guests. And on this episode, we speak to the Real Pigeons creators, Andrew McDonald and Ben Wood. Here we are with the Pigeons. We've got Ben and Andrew from Real Pigeons. How amazing has this series been? It's going off. Did you expect it would go off so much?
No.
No.
You hope that things are going to go well.
Yeah.
And we had a feeling. I think that it was something special when we put out Fight Crime.
Yes.
But we didn't know that kids would embrace it the way they've embraced it, and
Yeah.
that librarians and booksellers would be so supportive. I think that was the big surprise for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just been book week, obviously.
Yes.
Ben, I actually was able to catch one of your
Yeah, you
sessions,
did.
which
yes.
was good fun.
It was at the Northcote Library.
was.
It was really fantastic. there was quite a lot of people there.
Heaps of people. It
Yeah.
was like a sold out gig.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Standing room only. So
You did a wonderful drawing.
thank you. Yeah, I was quite proud of that actually.
Of a pigeon?
Of a
Yes.
pigeon.
Okay, what was
Stinky Boy, I think his
Yeah,
name was.
yeah.
He was a larger pigeon.
He was a great shape, actually.
Yeah.
I've stolen it.
Have you?
Yeah, I'm going to use that shape at
That's
some
what
point.
we do.
You know what? My daughter has started writing a pigeons-inspired little book herself,
Oh, fantastic.
featuring the two other creations that she made due to your workshop.
Yep.
And Stinky Boy as the baddie.
Oh, cool. I need to see this book when it's finished.
Yes, we'll make sure we'll get it to you. So, Book Week's obviously been, you get a chance to have the reaction from the kids as to what they're thinking about the books and what they like about it. What have they said to you? What's been the feedback from your target audience here?
The feedback that I got at schools was that just like total embrace of books that are not afraid to be silly, like really
Yeah.
silly and playful. And that kind of had me reflecting on my youth growing up, reading all of those kind of like Usborne puzzle adventure books that you kind of interact with, and
Yes.
you know, kind of like you feel like you're in the story.
Yeah.
And I think
Or
there's
Richard
something-
Scarry.
Richard Scarry, yeah, like little bits, and I've heard
Yes.
about kids who
Exactly.
Busy Town.
Yeah, Busy Town. Busy Town.
Lonely the Worm, the greatest creation in all
Awesome.
literature.
My favourite, yes.
He has a great car.
He does have a great car.
Yeah.
Gee, we
It's
could
the
just
apple.
reminisce for hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I found was that what was really interesting was that everyone had different characters they liked. It wasn't all just the one character, and that's what is so great about the series. It's a few different characters
Yes.
who they don't get along all the time, but you know, kids are really relating to them.
So obviously they're all pigeons, but they're
Yeah.
all very different. They look very different. Was it
Yeah.
important to you to make sure that, and straight away you could tell which pigeon was which?
Yes, exactly. Definitely with Homie and Rock, because they're both rock pigeons, sort of. Aren't
Yeah, yeah. If you Google homing pigeons, they can look a lot
they?
like the rock pigeons.
They look really similar. So I made sure that they look
Serious
really
Andrews about
Yeah, I have some pigeon facts to lay on you.
No, so I just Homie I drew really fast. I just knew what he would look like as soon as I'd read the story.
Yeah.
And I just knew he'd be huge like this,
Yes.
like a loaf of bread.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
He's
exactly.
just such a good character.
And then you've got all sorts of different other characters. One is particularly twirly. What's the twirly one?
Tumblr.
Yes.
She's my favourite.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, she's the eternal optimist in the
Yeah.
gang.
Yeah.
When I first saw the display in the museum of all the fancy pigeons, they kind of just jumped straight out at me because I was already thinking crime-fighting pigeons would be a great premise for a book.
Of course you were. Yeah.
And then when I saw the display of pigeons and like the fantail pigeon and frillback pigeon
Yeah.
and barb pigeon, I was like, these characters are kind of ready to go. They look amazing. They have incredible names.
So that's what you did. So you had the idea, and then you went and did some research in the museum.
Yeah, it was just happenstance.
Where did the idea come from?
Just
Do you have a love for pigeons? Are you a pigeon fanatic?
I wish I had room in my house to have a coop to keep pigeons. Some people do that. I love to visit those kinds of places, coops. It's a great story that I tell in front of kids when I go and visit schools. I say, you know, you can get inspiration from books and movies, or you know, sometimes from a dream or an idea will pop into your head. But you can also just like literally walk down the street and look down and see a pigeon and go, what if that pigeon was protecting me and fighting crime?
Yeah.
And where can you go from there? What kind of problems could you give that character, and what kind of story would that be? It's a great example of, you know, you can get inspiration from anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I notice here you've got something really special, actually. If we can hold that up a little
Just
bit.
arrived
way,
in the mail.
Can you explain, what is that exactly? I mean, it looks like a normal stick,
No,
but
it
is it a
isn't.
normal stick?
It's Trent. Trent the pet twig.
Trent the pet twig.
Yes,
But it's not just any twig, is it? The creation of this there's been a lot of work behind
Yeah.
this.
So we had some families and children emailing us and sending on social media photos of their pigeon costumes last week during Book
Which
Week.
were amazing.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
So good.
So much effort, so passionate, these readers. And one was so passionate that the parents, to complement the rock costume, 3D printed a Trent. So we've never had a Trent in like real life before, but here it is, and
It's
it's
so
not wood.
pretty.
It takes a lot of commitment to 3D print a twig when you could just go perhaps into the backyard and pick one up.
Yeah.
So you've got to admire that.
No, but now, like he's the
But he's
real, he's
perfectly
the real
trained.
deal now. Like
Yeah.
he's the real deal. He's so nice.
That's
I love
fantastic. Okay, so I guess my question for you is, they're so heavily illustrated. which is amazing.
Yeah.
How does that process work? That's probably what mystifies me the most.
Yeah.
It starts
Juggling?
with yeah,
A lot of
now,
juggling?
Now it starts with Ben and I kind of talking a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of texts go back and forth before we start working on an idea.
Yeah.
And then I'll go away and I'll spend some time writing lots and lots of drafts, like you would write a standard novel that just had prose in it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's like what people say about picture books: the fewer words you have to put in the final product, the harder it is to narrow them down. Because we've got to have a crime and a mystery and red herrings.
Yep.
And it's got to be funny.
It's got to be funny. It's got to be
And
villains.
it's 3 stories a book too.
Yeah.
Exactly, so that has to happen. So we've got kind of 70 pages roughly for each story,
Yeah.
3 times in a book.
Yeah, okay.
So I have to draft that out and make sure everything's as precise as it can be. And then it goes to Ben.
Yeah.
And we sit down with Heidi Grant Egmont, our publishers, who are a big player in making
Yeah.
books what they are. We storyboard it all out.
Yeah, a lot of work.
We have to sit down and talk about it. I mean, it's just there are things that happen that work better as a visual, and we think it's really important to have a mix of both. I really like that we've got comic panels.
Yes.
I stick them in wherever I can because it's just it really just is a different kind of pace for the story, and we want it to be really fluid. We want it to be text and image as a fluid thing that's not. It doesn't just support; it's part of the story.
Was it intentional to place it right where it is? Like, it's not quite a chapter book, it's not quite a graphic novel.
Yeah.
What did you really want to hit that middle zone there, or was that like a happy accident?
I think it was a happy accident, wasn't it?
The only thing that we were really thinking about in those early days was we want to give kids a book that they're hopefully not going to finish in 5 minutes as soon as it's being
Yeah,
bought.
yeah.
And we thought that doing 3 mysteries, 3 standalone stories in each book would hopefully mean that the book is going to last a little bit longer than the card-shaped home
Yeah,
and be
of course.
value for money for
Yeah.
the parents and teachers and librarians who are buying it.
And for me, I've illustrated a lot of picture books. I really wanted to have something that, even though it's denser and there's a lot in here, I wanted there to be a chance for readers to go back and actually find other things
Yes.
that are important.
There's lots to discover.
There's a lot happening.
Absolutely.
It kind
You
of
know.
reminds me of the first time I saw Aladdin, the animation as a kid, and I was like, "This is the best, funniest, most interesting film ever." And the adults in my life were like, "It's too fast. What's going on?" It's kind of like that. I think the kids don't think that it's chaotic.
That's right.
No,
we can
Kids
let it
can
go.
keep up. Adults,
Yeah.
no good.
And I think kids enjoy to pick out all the little bits, like the illustration there, and a little funny kind of side piece of dialogue over there, and a little caption here.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there for them.
It's awesome. Now, at a recent conference, there was a little bit of talk about allowing kids to imagine the text as opposed to so much full-on illustration. What are your thoughts on that take on literature? Do you have thoughts?
So a text that's highly illustrated.
Yeah, as in highly illustrated text, should we be allowing kids to imagine what's happening in the stories as opposed to, I suppose, I'm not saying I agree with this, but dictating what their imagination should come up with when they're reading it? Do you have a take on that?
I think it depends on the story.
Yeah.
Well, this is my answer. I'm not sure what your answer would be. But for me, going into Real Pigeons, it's always been, this is an early reader that I want to encourage readers to keep going.
Yeah.
I want them to have that fast pace. So I love imagination, like I really, really do. But I think for Real Pigeons, it just worked to have a lot of text and a lot of image, a lot of illustrations. I don't think it's a disservice to having an imagination.
Surely, if it gets more kids reading,
Yeah.
surely it's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, you can have more than one kind of book, and many books make up a kid's reading journey.
Yeah,
I think.
definitely.
And one of the main kind of story, the main piece of feedback that we get about Real Pigeons all the time, and it's usually different characters but same plot, is that a kid who's a bit of a reluctant reader, these are the most passionate readers, a reluctant reader picks it up, loves it, loves that he can, or she can kind of read the text. They get like a meaty story, a meaty mystery. It's simple to digest. There's lots of illustrations to keep them going, and they kind of propelled through the book before they know it. And we've heard this story a lot from parents that kids who are maybe reluctant to start with read this, and suddenly they're on, and they're off to other books, which is great.
Yeah,
It's great to be part of the reading journey.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely what you're saying. There's room for all, and this is a terrific way. I reckon this is one of the best examples for, we say reluctant readers, there's probably a better term, but I use it as well, but it's probably those reluctant reading kids. This is a perfect book for them, I'd say. It's great.
Yeah.
So what's next? More pigeons, other birds, seagulls? I mean, obviously Splashback has just come out.
Yes.
Are there any other birds you'd like to tell stories about?
Oh, there's so many massive list.
I mean, just how fascinated are you with birds?
Well, I think it's great to take the birds and animals from real life
Yes.
and give them personalities and draw on some of their names. So all the birds in the Real Pigeon series that we kind of carry across the names. The strawneck ibis is a strawneck ibis in real life
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
The bearded vulture in Real Pigeon's Nest Hide is a bearded vulture that only eats bones. We chose that because it wasn't kind of pulling apart the flesh of animals, a bit too scary for some young readers.
Yes.
But a vulture that eats bones, the same way that dogs eat bones, perfect.
Yeah.
So there's so many animals to draw on. But there's more pigeons.
Yeah, there are more.
Excellent.
And we've got an arc in mind as well.
Yeah.
So each of the books are standalone, but there's also like a bigger story that we're telling, and things change a little bit for the Real Pigeons in Real Pigeon Splashback by the.
This one's the game changer.
Oh, this is like a sliding doors moment for the
Yeah.
Real Pigeons. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for catching up with me today.
That's okay.
I'm also looking forward to the Twigs spin-off story. I can see a lot of possibilities with this guy.
Yeah, Trent.
Anything could happen with Trent.
Yes.
Yeah, available in toy stores soon, but also just in the park.
That's right. Hey, you shouldn't say that because you don't get a cut from the ones in the park.
That's true. We'll have to talk to our people about that.
Thank you, pigeons.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
The Real Pigeons Splashback book launch is on this Saturday. Check out littlebookroom.com.au for all the details.
Thanks, Adrian. It was a great interview.
Thank you, Sal. And it's just about time for us to wrap up this episode of the Kidlit Club. But I wanted to remind everyone, please post in the comments some of your favourite funny female authors. We were talking about funny female authors earlier, so it'd be great to hear what the people that are watching and listening think.
Yeah, so we had some suggestions, but we'd love to hear some more that we can maybe profile on the show.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, we'll see you next time.